Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah. About a very important question here. This is a screenshot taken from the website, official website of Shaykh Ibn Baaz, Rahimه Allah. Imam, scholar, esteemed person of knowledge, reviver of the Salafi manhaj. Here, in describing himself, who he took hadith from, and who he's got ijazahs from for hadith, included in the list of people that he heard hadith from is a person called Muhammad Shafiq Deobandi Hindi. And there are other names here that have been highlighted here. I mean, just because they might not necessarily be from Arabia, it doesn't mean that they are not Salafi. But let's just concentrate on the first name, Muhammad Shafiq Deobandi. The question is that how is it possible that we've got a Salafi scholar that he took knowledge from, a Deobandi? Now, like I said, there's so many things that can be said about this. But I want to focus and concentrate on maybe 2 or 3 principles. The first principle, not every innovator is the same. Not every innovator is the same. So let's take this particular school here, the Deobandi school. The Deobandi school itself is split. Some of them refer to themselves as Hayatis. Some of them refer to themselves as Mamatis. Some of them refer to themselves as Wahhabi. I mean, that's not a name or a doctrine that we ascribe ourselves to as Salafis. We wouldn't call ourselves Wahhabis. We talked about this before. It's actually a derogatory term. It's actually a term which degrades one of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. However, what they mean by that is that they are more orthodox in their aqidah, more orthodox in their tawheed and their approach towards abandoning shirk. So they wouldn't worship others besides Allah, they wouldn't go to graves. So Deobandi Wahhabi, for example. Deobandi Athari, for example, is possible. But then you can get Deobandi Sufi, then you can get Deobandi Hayati, meaning believing that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ is alive and perhaps even omnipresent. This exists within that school. I'm not trying to degrade anyone, I'm not trying to attack anyone, I'm not trying to belittle anyone. I'm just trying to say this is a fact. Within the Deobandi Darul Uloom school, you've got so many different people with so many different aqidas. So that's the first thing we have to understand. The first thing we have to understand, when it comes to innovators and innovations, not all of them are on the same level. Number 1. Number 2, are we then allowed to narrate a hadith, not take knowledge from? Because here you can see clearly in the screenshot, these are people that he heard a hadith from. There is a difference between a diraya and riwaya. So this is the second principle. The first principle, not all innovators are the same. Second principle, there is a difference between diraya and riwaya. A riwaya is for you to narrate. So a riwaya, a person narrates to you a narration. You are now taking this narration from the person who is narrating to you that narration, as long as he is trustworthy. He might be an innovator, but as long as he is trustworthy in what he is saying and what he is narrating to you, can you accept that? The answer is yes. As for diraya is the understanding. So in the ilm and the sciences of hadith, we have 2 tracks that run alongside each other. And this is something that the ulama of hadith constantly are investigating. A riwaya. A riwaya is the chain of narration. Has it come to you in a sound manner? If it has, then you can accept that, even if there are innovators within that chain of narration. As for diraya, this has to be taken from the Quran, Sunnah, and the understanding of Salaf as-Salih. So now you've got the hadith. It's come to you riwayatan, meaning it's come to you in its chain of narration in an authentic manner. The diraya side of it is the understanding. How do you understand the hadith? That has to be now done in a manner which is accordance with the Quran, Sunnah, and the understanding of Salaf as-Salih. So that's the second principle. Riwaya is one thing, diraya. So now the questioner, I'm not saying that they're confusing the 2 areas, but this is something that we need to clarify. And when you can understand that, then you can understand, okay, he narrated or had a hadith narrated to him from innovators, but that doesn't necessarily mean he took knowledge from the people of bid'ah. Third principle, can you, now this is another question which will probably come off the main question, the primary question, but also the second and probably the first principle that we just talked. Can you actually even narrate a hadith from innovators? Is that even a thing? Is that allowed? The ulama from the time of the Salaf was split into 4 main opinions. Some of them have said the narration from the innovator always rejected. As long as he's an innovator, we have to abandon him. So in his Sharh of Tirmidhi, Ibn Rajab rahimahullah, he quotes many from the ulama, from the Salaf. They have said we cannot have any kind of ta'awun, any kind of cooperation, any kind of ta'awun or narrating, there has to be hajar and boycotting the people of bid'ah. So he narrates to us that Abu Abdul Rahman al-Muqri narrated from Ibn Lahiyah, and then Ibn Rajab says that these people, or there was an innovator here, and they must be rejected. He brings the narration also from Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah. He said, فَلَمَّا وَقَعَتِ الْفِتْنَةِ, when the fitna fell, we then started saying, سَمُّوا لَنَا رِجَالَكُمْ, we then started taking caution. فَيَنْظُرْ إِلَى أَهْلِ السُّنَّةِ, if it is a person of Ahl al-Sunnah, then we used to take his narration. If it was from Ahl al-Bid'ah, we used to reject them. So the first view from the time of the Salaf is that any kind of innovator we reject. The second view is that there is a difference between the innovator and the da'i of the innovator. Meaning, a person could be an innovator and he narrates to you something which is sound. He is not like the person who is an innovator and he calls towards an innovation. Khatib al-Baghdadi, rahimahullah, in his Kafiyah, he brings a number of narrations from different ulama from the Salaf. I'll pick one now. Abdurrahman ibn Mahdi, rahimahullah. He said, when a narrator narrates to you, then we look at his narration. If he is a person who is a da'i, then he deserves to be rejected. Abu Dawud al-Sijistani, the well-known Imam of Hadith of Sunan Abu Dawud, or Sunan Abu Dawud, his teacher was Imam Ahmad Hanbal. He asks Imam Ahmad, يكتب عن القدر, do we narrate and record a hadith from a person who rejects qadr? Imam Ahmad responded by saying, إذا لم يكن داعيا, if he is not a caller, meaning he is not one of the imams and the leaders of that madhab, then you can accept it. If he is a leader and imam, then he must be rejected. So that's the second view from the ulama of the Salaf. Ibn Hibban, rahimahullah, goes into detail, and he is a supporter of this view, and in the introduction of his Sahih Ibn Hibban, he talks about it in this more detail. The third view, if the bid'ah is mughalladah and the bid'ah is not mughalladah, what does that mean? The bid'ah, if it is really bad to the level of kufr, to the level of zandaka, then that person must be rejected. However, if the bid'ah is not that bad, meaning he's got some things, but what he narrates to us in the riwayah is sound and it doesn't affect what he is narrating, and the bid'ah that he has, I mean, they're bad, but they're not to the level of kufr and, complete deviance, then we can accept it. And this has been explained to us also by Ibn Rajab in his Sharh al-Tirmidhi. The fourth view, and Imam Muslim rahimahullah mentions this in his Muqaddimah, that the mubtadi', we will treat his riwayah and his dirawah the same. Meaning the mubtadi' has only one approach to him, which is we must stay away from him. However, if we can confirm that this person has said to us something which is correct, then you can accept it. So now, the fourth view, and this is also explained by Khatib al-Baghdadi rahimahullah in Kafiyah also, I mean Ibn Hajar in the introduction of Sahih Bukhari, which is called Hadith Sari. They have explained to us that the fourth view now is that we must look at what he is saying, and if it is interfering, his innovation is interfering with the riwayah, then we reject it. And there are loads of examples of that. For example, there are so many ahadith which talk about the favour of Ali radiallahu anhu. And if you look at the chain of narration, sometimes there'll be a Shi'i, or they will call fihi tashayyu', he has some, Shia ideas. That would then make it, that hadith da'if, because of the fact that there's a person who is in the chain of narration, who is an innovator, and it is likely that he has innovated something, and the riwayah has been affected because of that innovation. So that's the fourth view. The fourth view is that we have to look at what he is narrating to us and whether that interferes with the riwayah. The correct view in this, I mean, they can be reconciled. I mean, now there is no fixed correct view, because the science of the hadith is not mathematics. It's not A plus B equals C, or 1 plus 1 equals 2. It doesn't work like that. Every single situation needs to be inspected. This now teaches us, now we don't want to go into how it's inspected, etc., but this now teaches us the third principle, which is that the people of bid'ah might narrate onto you something, and as long as, like you see here, some of these conditions are fulfilled, then you can narrate. That person's got a chain narration. He might be a Diyabandi, he might be something else, he might follow another tariqah or something like that. But as long as it's come to you from a sound chain, can you then accept it? Then there is no doubt that the ulama from the six books, Bukhari, Muslim, Abu Dawud, Tirmidhi, and Nasa'i, and Ibn Majah, all of them have narrations from innovators. I'll bring you a few more statements here. Yazid ibn Harun, he said you can narrate from a person of innovation as long as he is not a person who calls to that innovation. Shaykh al-Qadi, rahimahullah, he said you can take knowledge from everyone except for a Rafidi because his raft, his tashayyu' leads for him to fabricate a hadith into the narration, into the religion. And Shaykh Ibn Abdullah, the person that I've just quoted now, he was one of the contemporaries of Thawri. And there are other statements that I've got here. I don't really want to go into all of it in any more detail than we already have. Therefore, Shaykh Ibn Baaz, he's got Ijaazah from people who are not Salafi. How do we understand that? Number one, not all innovators the same. Number two, or not everyone that is not Salafi are the same, should we say, if there is a difference between the two things that I've just said. The second thing, there's a difference between Raya and Diraya. And the third thing is, if the narrator is narrating to you something which is sound and just, then that person is trustworthy. And trustworthiness and dabt and accuracy, all different things that, again, are principles that are important, but we don't have time for right now. Then as long as that person can be verified and that knowledge is acceptable in the riwayah, then there is no harm, inshallah. This now teaches us something which is really important, which I feel like, people really need to learn and understand. It's something that we've actually talked about before in our Usul al-Tafsir class recently, which is that people should be given their status according to what their status is. And not every single mu'amala with the people of bid'ah can be seen as us cooperating and what they call is tamyi, or a person watering down the Salafi manhaj, or the person's Salafiyah being into disrepute or guilty by association. All of these things need principles when it comes to the science of hadith and jarh wa ta'deel. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He gives us the best understanding and the best of application and acceptance with Him. Mada wallahu a'lam, sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad.